Welcome to our webinar, Minorities for Peace. I'm Natalia Pankowska, and I will be guiding today you through our session. We are gathered today to explore how minorities and indigenous communities can lead peace-building efforts, and how frameworks such as positive peace and dealing with the past can strengthen dialogue, social cohesion, and reconciliation. This will be explored by our three speakers today. And based on the results of our project, Minorities for Peace, enabling dialogue and through positive peace and mediation for minority and indigenous communities in Eastern Europe. Today, we also join the global observance of International Peace Day in September. It's going to be celebrated on the 21st of September, so we are fast to start the way. And this day was established by the United Nations in 1981 to promote peace worldwide and to encourage people, organizations, communities, and governments to work together to end conflict and foster a culture of peace and nonviolence. And this reminds us that it's not just peace is not just the absence of war and conflict, but also presence of justice, human rights, and inclusion. And today, we will explore how minority and indigenous communities are actively contributing to this vision of positive peace. So to start our webinar, and before I will introduce our three speakers today, I would like to invite everyone to share on the chat your name, your country, and your community. And also, I would like to invite you to respond to our first question, because during our session today, we are going to use different interactivities. And of course, we will have a very rich discussion, but also would like to get your opinion, your ideas. So I would like to invite you to respond to the first question. And the question is, in one word, what does peace mean in your community? And this can be everything. This can be your feeling. This can be your understanding of peace or what you want the peace look like. So please just share what you feel. It can be also written in your own language, not necessarily in English. So please visit Menti.com and use the code 54739978. So this could be, as I said, a feeling, a value, a priority. For example, it can be respect, safety, or other associations that you have about peace. And it can be written also in your native language. And also, we invite you to share on chat your name, your community, your country, your organization. So use the code 54739978. So, and I am also sharing your responses on the chat and on Menti.com. On the screen, do you see it? Yes. In one word, what does peace mean in your community? Recognition, foundation of democracy, relationships, inclusion, feel safe, representation, safety, no killing, no fear, no exposure to violence, friendship, absence of violence, respect for human rights. So thank you for contributing to our poll on Menti.com. And as we could see, the peace means many different meanings for all of us. And today we are going to deeply to learn what does peace mean for us, and first of all, what does it mean for minorities and for indigenous people around the world, and also based on our project in Eastern Europe. And now I'd like to invite our first speaker today, who will have a presentation about the work of the Institute for Economics and Peace, about the research on peace and minorities and contribution of minorities to peace and positive peace. And this is Patricia Garcia. She is also a Rotary Peace Fellow and studied at Chulalongkorn University. And she is a highly respected humanitarian and human rights advocate with over 20 years of experience in some of the world's most dangerous areas, including Afghanistan, Bosnia, Rwanda, Sudan, and the Thai-Burma border. And she was also appointed as an officer of the Order of Australia in 2016 and was a finalist for Australian of the Year in the same year. And she has served as a Human Research Fellow at the University of Sydney, where she designed the Human Rights course for the Master of Peace and Conflict Studies. And Patricia today will introduce us to the work of the Institute for Economics and Peace, and also with special focus on minorities and indigenous people. So, Patricia, you are welcome. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening. And good afternoon and good morning, everyone. Thank you to Minorities for Peace for inviting me to join you at this webinar. And I'd like to first to acknowledge that I'm meeting with you on the land of the Kamarugai people of the Iyer Nation. And I'd like to pay my respects to the traditional elders past, present, and emerging. This land has never been ceded, and this is Aboriginal land, always was, always is, and will be Aboriginal land. I'd like to first just be able to share a screen if it's possible.
Yes, it should be possible, and you are also a co-host. Please check the option.
And that, yes. Okay, I think I will start just to show my slides here. Thank you. Okay, just to start by saying that I'd like to first introduce Institute for Economics and Peace. I'm the Partnerships Development Manager at the Institute for Economics and Peace. And the Institute for Economics and Peace is an independent, non-partisan global think tank that measures and analyzes peace and the economic value of peace. IEP aims to shift the way the world thinks about peace to focus on peace as a positive, tangible, and achievable measure of human well-being and development. And we do this by focusing on metrics and indices that actually define peacefulness, and also promote a better understanding of what we call the social, economic, cultural, political, environmental factors that drive peace. And really what our emphasis is to look at the way in which we can create an environment in which human capacity can flourish. So one of the ways we do this is through our research. Firstly, I'd like to say that our office, head office is in Sydney, where I'm based. And we also have regional offices in New York, Mexico City, Brussels, The Hague, Nairobi, and our headquarters in Sydney. All our research reports and publications are produced in Sydney. And as you can see there, the body of our research work includes research that is currently used by organizations such as OECD, Commonwealth Secretariat, the World Bank, and the United Nations. Our work is also included in thousands of university courses, and already we have this year just published 10 published reports just for this year. But as you can see here, we've also had quite a wide media and social media reach. In 2008, IEP established its first what we call our flagship report, which is the Global Peace Index. And the Global Peace Index is a report that measures and analyzes the absence of violence and the fear, or the fear of violence, in 163 countries. That represents more than 99.7% of the world's total population. And with this Global Peace Index, just to give a short overview of that, we use 23 indicators and using a ranking score from 1 to 5 to rank each of the 163 countries on their absence of violence or the fear of violence. These are what we call the 3 dimensions that we use to be able to define peacefulness of each country. And these 3 dimensions are domestic and international conflict, safety and security, and militarization. And as you can see there are indicators for each of these 3 dimensions, which totals 23 indicators. And you could see some of the examples of the indicators. For example, in safety and security, we look at the number of refugees and IDPs, the impact of terrorism, the homicide rate, incarceration rate. In the indicators for domestic and international conflict, that includes intensity of organized internal conflicts, relations with neighboring countries, number of deaths from conflict, and of course, the militarization. And I just want to give an example of the recent 2025 Global Peace Index report, which was released in June this year. I've just put one slide up to show you, because the talk today, the webinar today, is focusing on minorities from Eastern Europe. I just thought I'd take the profile of the Eastern Europe and Central Asia findings for this latest Global Peace Index. And what you can see here is the ranking of the countries in the Eastern European and Central Asia region, and where they rank over the 163 countries. And in this particular slide, you can see here straight away that Bulgaria is in Eastern Europe, Central Asia, is the most peaceful country in that region. And of course, down at the bottom, you have Russia as the least peaceful and Ukraine second least peaceful country. This just currently has just been released as the current findings of where these countries are in their ranking of peacefulness. But on the overall ranking, you can see now that Russia is actually this year, for the first time, the least peaceful country in the world. It's 163 out of 163. It's right at the bottom. And even for me, this is actually quite a surprise, given that for many years, it's always been Afghanistan. And for many of you who might know the interesting parallel of that with Russia and Afghanistan having a war, and to see now Russia as being the 163 country, least peaceful country, which was previously the ranking of Afghanistan. It's just an interesting parallel about the history of these two countries. Over here is just a breakdown of, as I mentioned, those 3 dimensions: safety and security, domestic and international conflict, and also militarization. You could see here how we were able to rank those countries in the rankings that you saw. And for example, why these rankings have deteriorated, particularly these countries that have shown to be like Ukraine and Russia, why they now are the least peaceful countries. And this is the breakdown of the peacefulness of those countries in the Eastern Europe, Central Asia region. And these are the indicators, examples of the indicators that I mentioned before that we use for measuring the peacefulness, the absence of violence or the fear of violence. What I just want to sum up, in the case of particularly the Eastern European region, as I said, the Eastern European region actually experienced the 2nd largest deterioration of any region in the 2025 Global Peace Index, with the average level of peacefulness in the region deteriorating by 0.77%. The dominant issue here is the dominant issue in the region remains the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, which led to significant deteriorations in peacefulness in both countries. And Russia and Ukraine are ranked as the least and 2nd least peaceful countries now in the world. And this is according to the 2025 Global Peace Index. So I think this is really more just to show the situation. And we also see that with no immediate end to the conflict in sight, it is likely that Russia and Ukraine will remain 2 of the least peaceful countries in the world for the foreseeable future. So this is what we're seeing in our scoring about the situation with the Eastern Europe. We also have the situation of Ukraine showing that, as well as recording the largest deterioration in overall peacefulness in the region, there's also been, not only because of the ongoing conflict with Russia, but also Ukraine has experienced significant rise in other forms of internal violence, driven in part by stresses and deteriorations associated with the war. For example, domestic violence cases has surged in 2024 associated with the war. Domestic violence, a 20% increase from the previous year. We've also got an increase on organized crime activities, which have intensified, increased arms trafficking and gang-related violence, and the proliferation of firearms from the conflict. So as well as not only the ongoing conflict with Russia, but the situation of why Ukraine has deteriorated is because of all these other associated issues of violence. So it's just giving you a bit of a snapshot of the research that has come out of our most recent 2025 Global Peace Index. Now, the Global Peace Index is actually what IEP calls actual peace or negative peace. In other words, we look at what are the broken things, dysfunctional things in society, and we're looking at violence and conflicts and wars, and that's why we call it negative peace, because it's like looking at only the broken parts, dysfunctional parts, destructive parts in a society. And what IEP found through its research that it's not enough to try to look at peace by looking at what's broken and what's dysfunctional. We need to know what's necessary to make peace in a society. And that's why we came up with the concept of positive peace. So really what I'd like to say with positive peace is that IEP's concept of positive peace is a transformational concept. It's empirically based, and it shifts the focus away from the negative to positive aspects that create the conditions for a society to flourish. Due to the systemic nature of peace, improvements in positive peace are associated with many many desirable outcomes. For example, in a society such as higher income, per capita income, better measures of well-being, higher levels of resilience, better environmental outcomes, and also improved performance on the Sustainable Development Goals. These are what we call the benefits of being able to increase positive peace and therefore have the benefits to be able to build a much more what we call peaceful and resilient society. So you could see here, IEP's definition of positive peace is the attitudes, institutions, and structures that create and sustain peaceful societies. And the negative peace is what we refer to as the absence of violence or the fear of violence. And this is, for example, as what we showed through our Global Peace Index. So what I'd like to show you here, as I mentioned, the Global Peace Index, or the negative peace that we were trying to explain through this latest report, actually looks at peace by looking at the statistics and conditions of crime, suppression, military armed conflict. But actually, that's not enough to understand how we can build a peaceful society. So we take all the data from the Global Peace Index, and then we look at the peaceful countries, why those peaceful countries, like, for example, Iceland, Switzerland, Portugal, Denmark, Singapore, these countries in the top 10, how do they remain peaceful? Why are they peaceful? And we put those data sets together, and we use something like 20,000 data sets to analyze, aggregate, and be able to identify what are the positive factors that keep these countries that are very peaceful, peaceful. And putting this information together, we've come up now with what we call the Positive Peace Index. And this is actually our concept of positive peace. And this index actually uses what we call systems thinking. And this systems thinking is the underlying what we call methodological approach in which we define peace as a system. So what is then this positive peace concept? We've been able to come up with a set of what we call 8 interrelated factors or pillars of positive peace. And these 8 positive peace pillars are well-functioning government, equitable distribution of resources, free flow of information, good relations with neighbors, high levels of human capital, acceptance of the rights of others, low levels of corruption, sound business environment. And when we put all these 8 together and we combine them together, as you can see there, that we've got lines drawing across them because they are all interconnected. In other words, you don't look at these as single individual pillars, but they're actually pillars that are combined and interrelated, and they have to work as a system to be able to show that if peace is a system, you need a set of many different factors to be able to create peace. There's no what we call cause and effect, causality relationship when you use peace when you define peace as a system. So what are the benefits of being able to, why do we do positive peace? Well, we found that there are benefits by being able to have positive peace and to build positive peace in communities and in a country. And the benefits are high per capita income, stronger resilience, better environmental outcomes, high measures of well-being, and better performance on the SDGs. And so this 8 sets of pillars we call the positive peace framework is actually now one of the important tools that IEP uses to be able to educate, communicate, and train people so that they have now a practical tool to be able to show to people how they can actually apply and do peace in their community, in their organizations, in their networks. We found that with positive peace, there's a higher GDP growth compared to countries that don't have more positive peace. And this means that when you have positive peace in a country, it actually contributes to even higher economic growth compared to countries that don't have positive peace. We also found that there's a strong correlation between the social progress index and social well-being index and the positive peace scores. In other words, you could see here that the more positive peace you have within a community, the also improved and increased social well-being and social progress is also achieved. So there's a direct correlation between these two. We also could show that countries with better performance on environmental outcomes also tend to have stronger positive peace outcomes. And we also show that higher positive peace is associated with higher levels of human development, which captures education, life expectancy, and economic development. So the concept of peace as a system, and this is a very important concept because this is really the foundational concept and thinking that we use that underlies the basis of the positive peace framework. So basically, as positive peace is a system, it works as a social system, and we basically describe these 8 pillars as a form of a system with different subsystems, as you can see here. And basically, as a system works, as you know, because peace is a system, it's dynamic, it's not static, it's constantly moving, it has different internal, external factors, and it also is affected by shocks, and also has what we call feedback loops, and also encoded norms. So basically, because the system is very, very dynamic, we need to be able to understand what are those factors that keep this peace in a dynamic and transformational way, so that to understand how you can be able to create peace, you have to understand how this system works. And basically, this is the 8 pillars, which gives you an example of how you can use these 8 pillars to show how you can combine together to create peace. We also look at peace as a system where people would understand the concept where the whole is greater than the sum of the individual parts. Well, this again applies with the concept of positive peace, where we use this systems thinking of the whole being greater than the sum of the individual parts. So if you combine all the 8 pillars together, it will always bring out more peace than if you were looking at peace from each individual pillar. And this is important for being able to show how you can create change and increase peace by using a systems approach. I think for people working with minorities and indigenous communities, you can see that these 8 pillars have some strong relevance to issues being faced by minorities and indigenous communities. So what I'd like to say here is that by understanding the 8 pillars of positive peace, we are able to give a form of analysis for minorities, indigenous communities as a tool for them to try to understand how they can address their issues. I'll just move on a bit for the time. Okay, this is just in relation to the positive peace report that was produced, the latest report, which is the 2024 report, and showing that positive peace globally has improved and which are the countries. You will see when you look at the positive peace reports, whether 163 countries rank, the ranking in the positive peace report is very different to the ranking of the country in the Global Peace Index. So that's one of the things that we look at, because people, a country's ranking on a global peace index is very different. On the negative piece is often very different and very, very wide gap between their positive peace score and also their global peace index score. And you could see here that which of the pillars show where countries improve in their positive peace, which were the pillars that influence those improvements, and which were the pillars that create deteriorations in their peacefulness. Just very broadly, you can see here that we've also had which country. I wanted to just highlight North America was the region with the largest deterioration in positive peace. In other words, North America has the biggest deterioration in positive peace, particularly in this last decade. Europe remains the most peaceful region, but deteriorated on 3 pillars. And higher positive peace leads to greater social, environmental, and economic resilience. These are the countries that rank in the top 10 in the positive peace report. And we have Australia here in the number 10, but it's not in the ranking in the Global Peace Index in the top 10, but it happens to be in the top 10 in the Positive Peace Index. These are the countries that are the least peaceful in the Positive Peace report. And here we show the difference between attitudes, institutions, and structures. You could see here that there was improvement in the structures, which is this violet purple line here. And then also the improvements were much better in the attitudes. Sorry, the other way around. My mistake here. When you see the figure go down, when the number is lower, that means it's high peacefulness. When the number is very high, up to 5, it means that's very, very low deterioration in peace. So in IPEACE research, when the number is low, it's a 0 or a 1 or even lower. This means very high peacefulness in a country, whereas a high number reflects a deterioration and very low peacefulness. So you could see here the red, when the figure goes up, that's a high number. That means that the attitudes score was very, very high, reflecting that peace has actually deteriorated in the attitudes domain. These were the pillars that improved. You could see the blue were the pillars that improved over the past decade in the countries that had the pillars which improved, and those countries where pillars showed the least improvement were the pillars of low level of corruption, well-functioning government, and good relations with neighbors. And these are the indicators that we use for the positive peace. Now I'll move on, just to move on, because I want to go straight to our work in the actual area of training. As well as research, IEP also has developed education programs, trainings, and capacity building or capacity sharing, I'd like to call it. And in this area, this is the area where we are actually using the research as evidence and data to be able then to show people how we could be able to apply peace with our research. And we have developed particular tools such as the Positive Peace Framework, and are providing education activities such as our online academies and workshops to be able to show people how they can use our research and our tools to actually implement projects on peace, to also to be able to support people who are working on dialogue, particularly dialogue for social cohesion, intercultural understanding. as well as informing people who are working on policy, particularly policies that relate to either to development, to humanitarian work, to working on resilience and peace, as well as peace leadership. So leadership development is also one of the areas we're very strongly, and this is an area too where I feel that minorities and indigenous communities could benefit from, being able to have a chance to participate in our education and training activities, then to be able to apply our research and tools so that they can be able to implement their own peace projects, to also engage in dialogue, and also to improve their leadership skills. I'll just move on, just conscious of the time. Okay, I want to mention now, what I'd like to do is talk about our training. And oops, here we are, just here now, just a slide. Just like to say that in our training area, we work with multilaterals, corporations, international humanitarian development organizations, government policymakers and security forces, private sector, and also with local government, police, community leaders, faith leaders, and also individuals. And IP works always in partnership. We don't work on our own. We always believe in collaborations, and our collaboration is all about wanting to strengthen partnerships and solidarity with communities, including minorities and indigenous communities. And basically, as I mentioned earlier, the idea of having this positive peace as a tool, we are able to hope to develop people's capacity to be able to implement their own projects, engage in dialogues and leadership development, so that they can have some benefits long-term to show that they can actually build peace in their societies. In the terms of trainings, I'd just like to say that we have already, our trainings have been delivered in countries such as Zimbabwe, Uganda, Kenya, Mexico, Colombia, Tunisia, Libya, Cambodia, Philippines, and Australia. We've also participated in, and the people who participated in them have included people from government, from business, from police, NGOs, faith-based leaders, youth and community leaders. And we have also an online academies, which is the Positive Peace Academy. And we also have our flagship IEP Ambassadors Program. And to date, we've trained more than 4,500 global IEP ambassadors from some 100 countries. And basically, the next IEP ambassador program will start in October. And you are all welcome, those of you who are interested, to apply, to register now on our IEP ambassador program, which is on our website, visionofhumanity.org. And these are just examples of some of our projects that we have done in terms of examples of the workshops. And one I'd like to say is called Peace 9/11, which was in the Philippines. And this was a training which engaged communities, including the Muslim rebel groups who were in Mindanao and in the south of the Philippines, together with the indigenous communities in that area, together with the government officials working in that area. And this was a collaboration of a peace project that they developed as a result of the positive peace training that this group undertook in 2018. And it's still continuing to this day. This is just examples of how they used the pillars and what they did as a result of applying the 8 pillars. Another project was in Australia. We worked with the Pacific youth communities in Western Sydney. And this was a partnership with Western Sydney University and Institute for Economics and Peace. And this was a 3-day workshop with the youth from the Pacifica countries. And it was led by the youth community. And their project resulted in making a documentary film about the Pacifica cultures. And this was done by the actual youth who participated in the workshop. We have also another project in Uganda on water, and we also again involved the community here in a water sanitation peace project following the training on positive peace. And lastly, the last project was a project with Rotary. IEP has had a 6-year partnership with the Rotary International, and we've been doing projects with Rotarians and Rotary clubs around the world on supporting Rotarians and their community to develop and implement peace projects using the positive peace framework as a tool to build peace in their communities. So I think I will stop there because I'm coming now to the end and just showing you examples of how each of these projects are applying the positive peace framework, the 8 pillars of positive peace, and what they did as a result of using the positive peace tool. So I'd like to end with just asking people, those of you who would like to keep in contact with IEP and to know more about our work, and particularly in terms of how specific communities, because IEP works very much with different communities. And in previous workshops, for example, many of the workshops that I conducted last year included members of indigenous communities in Cambodia and also in the Philippines and also here in Australia with our indigenous communities. And this is an important lessons that I've learned as a result of showing how different minorities and indigenous groups can actually understand and offer their own, use their own concept of peace to be able to show how we need to be able to center voices, lived experience, community connection, and grounded leadership that minorities and indigenous communities have. I'd like to end with the last slide here, which is just examples of the current trainings and education activities that IEP have at the moment. And what we'd like to also do is give our communications information. For those of you, we have our website, visionofhumanity.org, where you will find all our reports and publications that you can download, which are free. And also, we have the IEP Positive Peace Academy, which is a free short online training course that introduces the concept of positive peace. It takes about 2 hours to do, but this is an online course. It's already available on our website, and it's available in 42 languages. We also have our positive peace workshops, which are the trainings that I mentioned to you that we have, that we deliver all around the world. And also we have the ambassador program. And as I said, for those of you interested to do that, all you need is a computer and a internet, and the program will start in October. So please feel free to go onto our website and to our ambassador program to register for the IEP ambassador program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patricia, for this comprehensive presentation, also presenting the positive peace, what the concept of positive peace, the activities of the Institute for Economics and Peace, but also showing that minorities and indigenous people, they cannot be only passive participants, but also key actors in delivering positive peace. So this is very important. And I'm sure there are many questions from our participants, and we will have time at the end so we could have an engaging discussion. And if you have already any questions to Patricia, please share on the chat. And I would like also to mention that our audience is very diverse today. Welcome to all Rotary members, Rotary Peace Fellows from different countries, from different centers, Rotary Peace centers, but also minorities. Minority fellows from the United Nations program and indigenous people, and also representatives of organizations working with minorities and indigenous people from all over the world. So, and of course, my colleagues from the Rotary Peace Fellowship Alumni Association. I see that Kati is here, Kati Doherty, who is the president of the board of the organization, and also I see Eva Chermak, Nino Latishvili, who are European coordinators for our association. So welcome everyone. And now I would like to invite two my colleagues, Rukmini Iyer and Rafał Pankowski, to show how the concept that Patricia has just presented was applied in the context of Eastern Europe, working with minorities and indigenous people in our part of the world where the war is happening now. And I would like to invite my colleague Rukmini. And Rukmini is Rotary Peace Fellow alumna from Chulalongkorn University, and she is also one of a leading peace builder in Asia, South Asia, and she is trained in trauma and healing approaches. And Rukmini was one of the leading people who work on our project. And one last but not least, I would like also to mention that we are also welcome our friends from Ukraine here. And I saw that Valentin Zaronkin is joining, also very important participant, active participant of our program from Ukraine, based now in Warsaw. So welcome everyone. And now, Rukmini, the floor is yours, and I will share the slides.
Thank you, Natalia, and welcome everyone. I noticed some of us in the audience are new to the project as well, so I'll start off with a little bit of background and then go on to share some of our learnings from this work. So this project began under the aegis of the Rotary IEP partnership, which Patricia mentioned in her presentation, that Rotary and the Institute for Economics and Peace had a 6-year partnership, which also included some amount of project support, and we felt the need to do this work against the backdrop of the Ukraine war. So the project began as a way of exploring how do we enable dialogue in a region that was flooded with refugees, attempting to integrate into communities which were not quite sure how to accept them. And that there is, of course, the trauma of war, and all of this gets very intensified when you are a refugee from a community that is a minority in your home country, or you're from indigenous communities that are in any case largely underrepresented in most mainstream systems. So our attempt was to look at, is there a way to utilize the positive peace framework along with other tools, including mediation and systems thinking, in a way that we could support these communities. So that was the focus of the project. And we, along with positive peace, another key framework that we wove into the work was UN's Dealing with the Past. Those of you who are from the human rights background would be familiar with the Dealing with the Past framework, which was commissioned by the UN Human Rights Commission and developed by Swiss Peace. The project was structured in a manner that there was one part of it, a key part of it was education and training around positive peace, dealing with the past, and mediation as the core principles. We started off with 8 online sessions. This was during July and August of 2024, where we had close to 40 people being part of this project. Most of our participants were based in Poland and Moldova. Some continued to be based in Ukraine and some other parts of the world. And they all are leaders in their own communities, which are either minority or indigenous communities. And as we went through these 8 online sessions, which all of which had simultaneous interpretation, we have our wonderful interpreter Danuta on the call, and we had interpretations happening in Ukrainian and Russian on every call. And the idea was to equip our leaders with frameworks which they could then take back into their communities and integrate into projects and peace initiatives that they went on to develop. And we will share a little bit, Rafał will share a little bit about those initiatives as well later. We also had the opportunity to extend the project to doing some in-person work in Poland and in Moldova. We did one in-person workshop in Warsaw around positive peace and mediation, and 2 workshops in Chisinau in Moldova. We had lovely project partners in both cases on the ground. We had the Multicultural Center of Warsaw supporting us in Poland, and we have Moldova for Peace and Ecotiris. And I want to also acknowledge Ivan from Moldova for Peace and Iyer. And I think Tatiana's also on the call from Ecotiris. So thank you for supporting us. And I think what we hold very precious as a part of the project was the toolkit that we developed during the course of this work. And the toolkit is now available in 6 languages, if I'm not wrong, on our website, minoritiesforpeace.org. We'll share the links later. And it's a toolkit that's free to download, and you can also use it and replicate it in different ways in the kind of work that you may be doing. I spoke a little bit about our participants. They represented many different communities, including the Roma. We had the Jewish community in Eastern Europe being represented, several indigenous groups, including the Sami, Udmurt, Komi, Buryat, Songol. And we also had small indigenous groups which we had the Italman community being represented, which now is left with only about 2,000 people all around the world. And the participant we had from that community was doing incredible work in terms of also preserving their language. And we also had national minorities from Poland, Germany, and others. In our project partners and also in participants, we had representatives from the Asian and African communities as well. In terms of the framework, the key frameworks that we worked with, Natalia, if you could go to the next slide. We attempted to weave in these 2 core frameworks. Patricia already spoke about the pillars of positive peace, and we thought it was important, given the context of the region, to anchor the pillars of positive peace against the dealing with the past framework, given the given the historical trauma that the region has consistently endured in the form of genocide, in the form of ongoing wars, economic deprivation, political instability. And therefore, it was really important to acknowledge the intergenerational trauma that is still present in the region and needed to be worked with. So dealing with the past provided a very solid foundation for us to build this work on. And in terms of interpreting these frameworks against the context of minorities and indigenous groups, if we could go to the next slide. What was very critical for us to focus on was, from a minority and an indigenous perspective, it was critical for us to focus on protection of existence of these communities, and then build on to work on protecting and promoting their identities, moving towards looking at opportunities for equality and equity in the communities that they are now refugees in, and looking at ways in which this can be done in a manner that is as non-discriminatory as possible and includes the principle of justice embedded in the work that we do. And eventually our idea in doing this project right from the beginning was for us to initiate it, but to leave the ideas and the concepts and the toolkit seeded in a manner that the impact of the project can continue to ripple out, not just in Eastern Europe, but hopefully also in other parts of the world. So if I were to reflect on some of our learnings from this work, I think firstly, the fact that we found it critical and very useful to integrate frameworks and not treat them as separate. So we integrated the positive peace framework, the minority rights framework, dealing with the past, mediation. We brought in elements of systems thinking, and weaving it all together meant that each of these frameworks offered their gifts into the project design in their own way. For example, dealing with the past gave us the moral compass, right? The ability for truth-telling, for justice, for reparations, and looking at how can we work towards guarantees of non-recurrence. Positive peace, of course, gave us this, the sense of structure around 8 pillars that Patricia spoke about that sustain peaceful societies. And mediation gave us the practice, the practical, local, on-ground application to hold dialogue and to transform relationships. I think the key learning which stands out for me as one part of this project team is the fact that in work like this, it is critical to have grassroots approaches, and the fact that what sustains peace is really the slow and continual community-led processes of dialogue, which eventually go on to build trust and very slowly resolve trauma. The second learning, which I think I'm still continuing to engage with and trying to expand on, is for us as a world to really understand and work with the potential of minority and indigenous communities as mediators. Our participants brought in multiple identities, and with those came a lot of cultural competencies and lived experience of displacement, and that then also means that these were people who were mediators that through their experience were capable of bridging divides that a lot of majority-led processes often cannot. And thirdly, I think there's no underlining enough the importance of inclusion and solidarity. And we saw how solidarity among minority groups could become a foundation for new forms of cooperation. But of course, it's really important to acknowledge that inclusion in any context should not really place the full burden of reconciliation on minorities. It really requires broader social responsibility on all our part, regardless of what our identities are. So those are some of the learnings that I can share. And of course, happy to expand on any of this when we move to our Q&A session at a later point. But for now, Natalia, let me hand it back to you.
Thank you so much, Rukmini, for this excellent overview and for sharing us the learnings from the project, which I think would be very interesting for our participants to explore further. And of course, later we welcome project participants Valentin, Ilya, Ion, Brenzila, Evgeny Galashapov to also to share their learnings at the end of the session. But before, I would like to invite Rafał Pankowski, our colleague and team member, who will talk about regional practical outcomes with learnings, also his learnings from the project. We focus on dealing with the past, future plans and challenges and solutions. Rafał, please.
Thank you very much, Natalia. Thank you very much, Rukmini and Patricia. It is a real pleasure and an honor to be here with you and discuss our work with this really truly global audience with so many prominent human rights activists and peace activists from so many different countries and continents. I have a few things to say, but let me start on a personal note. As a co-founder of the Never Again Association since 1996, well, we have participated in many projects and initiatives in the field of human rights and genocide education and anti-racism. But I would say that this particular initiative, Minorities for Peace, has been among the most meaningful and valuable projects in which I personally have participated, and I really think this might be the view of many of my colleagues at Never Again. Now, in terms of learnings from the Minorities for Peace project, I think I might just mention some of them. I think the really important one is that dialogue and positive peace as a concept can bridge deep divisions, even in wartime, even during war. And I think that as a result of this experience, well, we have really seen that minority activists and indigenous community activists can really come together despite all the mistrust and trauma that exists. They can engage in dialogue even in wartime. And in this project, we obviously had active participants from the Ukrainian refugee community and different groups within it, but we also had representatives of minority and indigenous groups and communities from the Russian Federation and Russian human rights activists and anti-war activists, and just bringing them together and enabling the dialogue has been a major success for this project, which was mentioned many times by many participants and observers. So positive peace combined with mediation and combined with the framework of dealing with the past really gave us and gave the participants a kind of framework to interact in a safe space and reframe conflict and build mutual respect and trust. That is very important. So that proves that peace building doesn't need to wait until after the war ends. It can and in fact must start during the conflict. Now, among some other reflections I'd like to share, I have this one. Empowering minority and indigenous community leaders multiplies peace building impact. So by training and equipping displaced minority leaders, training in positive peace, in mediation and systems thinking, that this project strengthened their confidence and leadership capacity. Also, the participants in many cases took this knowledge back to their communities, inspiring more grassroots initiatives. So, for example, radio programs on peace or local projects or youth projects and so on. What we have found has been important is the use of minority languages and in general a degree of cultural sensitivity and competence and inclusive participation that for us ensured that marginalized voices were not only included but positioned as leading voices for the Minorities for Peace initiative. Now, dealing with the past has been mentioned several times already as a very important point of reference in our initiative. We believe it is not really optional. It is very foundational. So historical discrimination and current violence are things that are overlapping. So without addressing the past and the injustices of the past, the contemporary peace efforts cannot succeed. Now I would like to mention a few regional outcomes or practical results of the project. As Rukmini already alluded to, we had several community-based projects that were developed by members of our initiative. The participants who shared the project ideas in our discussions, and each of those sessions, each of those projects are truly inspirational and impressive. And I will just list them in no particular order, but I think you will get the idea. So, for example, one initiative entitled Ukraine's Diversity as Strength, that was presented by Mykola Humaniuk, our good friend and one of the pillars of the Minorities for Peace team, who is a sociologist and a theater maker, as well as an expert on ethnocultural minorities in Ukraine. Another project under the title A Yazidi Woman is Someone. This is an initiative developed by Berivan Avdoyan, who is a lawyer and a member of the Yazidi community of Ukraine. Then another important project is the Roma of Ukraine, Origins and Challenges of War, and the educational course, the Roma of Ukraine. Then we had the Intl Kamchatai people. Rukmini mentioned the Intl minority participation in our initiative. So the Intl Kamchatai people, the thorny path of the Kuti children, the project developed by Tian Zaochnaya, a representative of the Intl community. Then content activism as a way of dealing with the Udmurt past. It's a project developed by Nia Ogorodnikova, who is a linguist and a community leader for the Udmurt community in the Russian Federation. The Sami people, their self-determination and self-governance, a project developed by Andrei Danilov, a community leader of the Sami minority. Then fostering positive peace through journalism, a case study from Buryatia. This is a project that is developed and shared with us by Anna Zuyeva, who is a famous independent journalist from Buryatia. Then we have the Free Buryatia Foundation, the first ethnic anti-war initiative in Russia, presented by Alexandra Garmazhapova, who is well known as the founder of the Free Buryatia Foundation and a journalist. Last but not least, we had a presentation of the Human Living Library by Boris Romanov, our friend from Russia, who is a human rights activist and practitioner, as well as an educator. Like many of our Russian friends and partners, he's a political exile as an anti-war activist, currently outside of Russia. So let me also mention that we also had some additional initiatives. The initiative for dialogue between Ukrainian and Buryat communities, breaking through mistrust, which is a difficult issue resulting from the war against Ukraine, and the participation of members of the Buryat community in the war, which, as you can imagine, is a complex and difficult issue, requiring a lot of dialogue and goodwill. Then we also have youth-led cultural projects on preserving identity while promoting peace values. So all these initiatives, they prove that minorities, and especially displaced minorities, are not only just victims of the war, but they can and they are also active peace builders. And this has been one of the main observations that could be made during the implementation of the project Minorities for Peace. Now, I already mentioned that dealing with the past is an important point of reference. So let me just mention it once again, and let me just quickly state that, like Natalia already said, the region of Eastern Europe is marked by many different layers of historical trauma, from World War II, the Soviet era or the communist era repression and ethnic discrimination, as well as the current war in Ukraine. So dealing with the past is really a very essential part of peace building today, in order to confront atrocities such as the current war crimes in Ukraine. It is necessary to acknowledge the suffering of minorities through the dealing with the past perspective. And also it helps build the foundations for reconciliation in future. So I think also our experience in this project showed that when provided with safe spaces and structured frameworks, people are actually willing to face painful histories and have an open dialogue across divides, ethnic and national and other divides. Now, running quickly, maybe just a few words about some challenges that we faced. And there is no denying this kind of project has difficulties. It gives a lot of satisfaction and positivity, but it comes with challenges. Among the challenges, of course, we had to think about safety concerns, and especially when discussing atrocities, and especially the participants coming from the Russian Federation. We had to take into account the safety concerns around their participation, among other things. Of course, there are also cultural barriers, and we found that some groups were more reluctant to join. We had some contacts with the Chechen community or the Dagestani community, but we found that building trust takes time, and this is also one of lessons learned. Then maybe ironically, I think we can call the project a success, but this kind of success also raises demands for continuity, and given the sources, this is also a certain challenge that we are facing now, and we hope to to continue with the positive legacy of what we achieved. And among other things, I could also mention the issue of communication. Something I could have mentioned earlier. The multilingual context, of course, requires careful facilitation in order to maximize inclusion. But we tried to deal with that thanks to Danuta and thanks to the multilingual participants, which is precisely the kind of intercultural competence that minorities often bring. So that was actually very very helpful. And I could mention something more on the level of opportunities and solutions, and also hopefully the future of the Minorities for Peace initiative. So we are definitely thinking about sustainability. We think it would be very very important to expand the mediation training and positive peace education opportunities through scholarships and support from Rotary and other actors and allies in this field. We believe it is important to strengthen the networks that have been created and build a regional alliance of minority peace leaders for ongoing collaboration in terms of follow-up and next steps. And of course, it's still important to integrate indigenous practices and link the peace frameworks with cultural traditions of minority communities. And one more thing that is a little difficult but not impossible is how we bring minority voices into the regional and international peace-building agendas. So now, in conclusion, I would like to say that this project has shown us that even in the hardest of circumstances, such as this, an ongoing war, minorities and indigenous communities are not only bearers of trauma, but they're also carriers of hope. And yes, dealing with the past is painful, but it is also the key to building a peaceful future in Eastern Europe and elsewhere. Well, thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rafał, for your presentation and for discussing all the challenges we were facing and our solutions. And once again, thank you very much, Rukmini and Rafał, because these are two people who were behind developing the program for minorities and indigenous people, and Rukmini especially for organizing our in-person seminars in Chisinau, in Moldova and Poland. So these are key people, and I see that also Birivan is joining us from Yazidi community from Ukraine. Welcome, Birivan. She also contributed a lot to the project. So now I'd like to invite you for questions to our speakers. And meantime, I would like also ask you to share on the chat one question. What one strength do minority or indigenous communities bring to peace building? At the end, also Rukmini will do a Menti exercise with you, but now please share on the chat when we will collect all your ideas. One strength what you think minorities and indigenous people can bring to peace building. You could share on the chat, and please, the floor is open. Everyone is welcome to ask questions to our speakers or to add something from the team members. maybe someone from minorities, from Rotary members, or our contributors from Moldova. For example, we have Ion Brinzila from Moldova for Peace, Ilya Trambitsky from Ekatira's Environmental Association from Moldova, who are also doing a lot for Positive Peace, Valentin and Berivan. If there are no questions yet, I have a question. I have a question to Patricia and maybe to also to Rukmini and Rafał. Yes. Could you think what, for example, one thing in your opinion, what minorities and indigenous people can bring to peace building and to positive peace, but this thing is overlooked, like it's underestimated by others? One thing you think is important, but not is taken into account yet. If any of you, yeah.
For me, it is the diversity, and particularly the importance of being able to express identity in a way that for many of us is often a difficult issue, particularly I think in conflict affected countries. So I think this is an area where I see there's a lot of strength in the diversity of the aspects of how minority indigenous community define their identity.
Thank you very much, Patricia. Rukmini?
Given time, Natalia, may I respond to Ratnavel's question on the chat?
Yes, okay. So yes, you're right. We have two questions, and we have a question, how can the networks of minorities be strengthened across borders to support each other in conflict resolution and peace building?
Yeah, so how can we strengthen? I think through work like this, I mean, there are good starting points, and then it's also important to continue to resource these communities in whatever format they can be resourced in a manner that the work can continue. I think it's important to not institutionalize the work, but really design it in a format that can be seeded and then easily adapted to different contexts, because a lot of times it is the institutionalization that tends to create blockages. So that's in terms of that question. I also want to address Ratnavel's question before that, which is how difficult is it to make minorities participate in peace processes? I think it's interesting in the way it's framed, in that I don't think minorities or indigenous communities in any context, it's not that they're unwilling to participate in peace processes, it's just that more often than not, the processes are just not designed for them, because most peace building structures tend to privilege dominant narratives. You know, they overlook lived experiences around exclusion, and you know, they more or less always expect minorities to carry the burden of reconciliation without addressing systemic injustice. So there is a lot of need to build trust and safety before we can step into the work. And so, yeah, I think we need to go into the process knowing that minorities already hold knowledge and resilience and the intercultural competencies that Rafał mentioned. If you're able to go into that, go into the process with that acknowledgement and humility, I think it's fairly easy to then bring all kinds of stakeholders into these processes.
Thank you, Rukmini. There is also one question to you, and we can get to it a little bit later. I'd like just to mention that there is a comment on the chat from Berivan, who represents the Yazidi community from Ukraine, and she's based in Ukraine. She's an internally displaced person. She says that I believe national minorities as a whole can become part of an active minority and build positive peace through joint efforts. These are very important words from a very active Yazidi woman from Ukraine. And we have also a comment from Kati Doherty, who is board president of Alumna Rotary Peace Fellowship Alumna Association. She says every community must be at the table to build peace. Minorities bring perspectives and strategies that are key to their communities. Rafał, would you like also to respond to any of his questions very briefly? And
well, I'm also aware of time, and I think a lot of important things have been said already, and I read with a lot of interest the important comments in the chat, and very meaningful. I hope they will be preserved, because I think it's important to keep them in mind. But I would just say that I realize, of course, that a lot of the things that we said today sound like they are easier said than done, okay? But I think what is important, thanks to the experience of Minorities for Peace as an initiative, and also all the other wonderful initiatives across the world that Patricia told us about, this can be done. It is not just an abstract concept of positive peace as a conceptual framework that's invented. It actually comes from real life experiences, and it's applicable in real life experiences. And I just hope it can be applied more. And I think it's for all of us to contribute to the application of the idea of positive peace, not only in Ukraine and in the context of the Ukraine-Russia war, but globally. Well, once again, thank you so much for the opportunity to share some reflections on our work. And once again, thank you so much for all the comments.
Thank you very much, Rafał. And before going and give a word final to Rukmini, I see also a comment from Viviana. For me, minorities are really the global majority, see and relate with the world in the way that we could all learn. So thank you for all your contribution on the chat. And Patricia, would you like to say something very briefly? Respond to any of his comments or questions?
Really, sorry, I'd just like to say it's been a very wonderful conversation and discussion that we've had. I only just wanted maybe just to do a quick shout out to a friend and colleague who has joined us for this webinar. Her name is Dr. Viviana Rodriguez Carrion, and she's a social scientist and university lecturer at Sydney University. And she specializes in human development through a transdisciplinary approach, focusing on human agency, collective trauma processes, and leadership for systemic transformation. And I just think with her background, particularly we were talking about mediation, I think Viviana would be someone who'd be very interested to connect with those of us who are interested in this area of how we could be able to support more mediation work for minorities and indigenous communities. And I hope Viviana can give her contact details there for us to contact.
Thank you very much, Patricia, and sure we will be in touch and we are happy to collaborate. And now I would like to give a floor to Rukmini, who will do a very short exercise with all of us. And let's stay 5 more minutes if possible. And also there is a question to Rukmini from our colleague and friend, Evgeny Goloshapov, who is one of the leading human rights defenders in Moldova, former president of Amnesty International Moldova. Rukmini, you may answer, and then you can switch to the question, to the Menti question to all of us.
Sure. In fact, I'll post the Mentimeter link on the chat, and all of us can start responding to it while I respond to Evgeny's question. And yeah, a few different things come to mind, Evgeny. Well, one is, and of course, I must preface it by saying that none of these national or large-scale mechanisms to work with trauma have been super successful. I think we still have a lot to learn around how to work with collective trauma. But having said that, yeah, mechanisms like Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa and Peru come to mind. Also, the kind of memorialization work that's happened around genocide in Eastern Europe, those are good starting points. Also, there are in certain contexts we've had transitional justice mechanisms such as in Cambodia, which have had varying degrees of success, but the intention was very much to acknowledge trauma and look at working through it. I think Rwanda is a great example that comes to mind around psychosocial healing and arts-based work and rooting the trauma work in communities and empowering them. So that's a good example that comes to mind. But I think as a world, we still have a long way to go in terms of really making sure that we bring in trauma, address mechanisms to address trauma, which are really rooted in the culture and in the ancestry of the land, and not really imposing Western frameworks onto communities that have a very different socio-cultural reality and context. So that is something that's important to bear in mind. With that, I noticed Rafał has shared some contact information. Vasanthi, you had asked for the email ID for Never Again. Natalia has also put in on the chat the website for Minorities for Peace, where we also host the toolkit that I mentioned in several languages. So please feel free to use it and also distribute the tool as widely as you can. And with that, let me quickly check what do we have as responses on the Mentimeter. If you've not yet responded, the link is on the Zoom chat. If peace is more than just absence of conflict, then what's essential to build lasting peace? No dictator leaders. Yes, I think given the state of our world, that certainly is one ask. Trust building, giving voice to all, which is a long-term process that each of us needs to engage in our own ways, respecting human rights. Absolutely. Give it a few more seconds. As a Yazidi woman, I'd like to say true peace comes when justice, memory, and healing are honored so that the pain of the past does not repeat itself. Without dignity, silence may exist, but it's not peace, absolutely. And I imagine that's Berivan. Thank you for that. Okay. Lovely. Thank you so much for engaging with us. Please feel free to reach out to any of us if you want more details about the project or any resources that we've developed. We are also very excited about the idea of finding opportunities to replicate this project in other contexts around the world. So if you see opportunities to do that, please reach out to us as well. Natalia, would you like to close?
Thank you very much, Rukmini. Thank you very much, Patricia, Rafał, for your excellent presentations and contributions. And of course, we will have recording of your presentations, and we will share with our network of multiple minorities, and we will do summary in very multiple languages we usually use for our projects, and we'll stay in touch. And Patricia, you could also share your contact details on the chat. So if someone like to join Academy for Positive Peace, I think Berivan is already attended. First she attended our program, and then she signed up for Academy of Positive Peace. And I would like also to mention that we have some Rotarians. I said it in the beginning, but very grateful to Rotarian Walter Ebner from a district in Austria. Thank you for joining us and being from the beginning to the end, and also Rotarian Alona Kirushkina from Poland, Ukraine, who also participated in our in-person seminar and mediation conducted by Rukmini in Warsaw last year. And all others, thank you so much for being with us today.